Welcome to Lesson 3-4. Today we're going to talk variable expressions. Our learning objectives for today: you will learn how to decide which variables to use when representing unknown quantities. You will learn how to form expressions by using these variables. Take a second to read the problem before moving on. When someone is having trouble with algebra, they may say, "I don't like math." While this may seem weird to you, it is a true statement. Math, like English, French, Spanish, or Arabic, is a second language that you must learn in order to be successful. There are verbs and nouns in math just like in any other language. In order to understand math, you must practice the language. A verb is a doing word, such as running, jumping, or driving. In math, verbs are also doing words. A math verb is called an operation. Operations can be something you have used before, such as addition, multiplication, subtraction, or division. They can also be much more complex, like an exponent or a square root. Suppose you have a job earning $8.15 per hour. What could you use to quickly find out how much money you would earn for different hours of work? You could make a list of all the possible hours, but that would take forever. So instead, you let the hours you work be replaced with a symbol, like H for hours, and write an equation such as the amount of money you would have is equal to 8.15 times H. A noun is usually described as a person, place, or thing. In math, nouns are called numbers and variables. A variable is a symbol, usually an English letter, written to replace an unknown or changing quantity. Now we can choose whatever variables we want to for a given situation, but usually in math we like to keep things simple. So for example, if we're talking about the number of cars on a road and we're going to use a variable for that, we're going to use C for cars. If we're talking about the time in minutes of a ball bounce, we would use M for minutes. Or if we're talking about the distance from an object, we would probably use D for distance. So basically, whatever it is that we're talking about, when we want a variable to use, we usually use that first letter, if at all possible. So what we're going to do in this section is we're going to learn how to write algebraic expressions based off of a verbal sentence. Okay, so the sentence that we're given here is 2 more than 5 times a number. Okay, so we're going to start with, if we do order of operations, times, okay, that's going to be what we start with. So 5 times a number. So our number, when they use that in an expression, that means we're going to use a variable. And as we talked about before, when we use a variable, we usually use the first letter. So N. So to finish that, now we're going to do 2 more than that. When you hear more, we think of plus. So we're going to add 2. So 2 more than 5 times a number would be 5 times N plus 2. And so when we want to write this, we don't need this times in there. We can get rid of it, and we would say 5N plus 2. So now we've got 3 more than 2 times a number. So again, we see this word times. We're going to take 2 times. Remember, a number means variable. So we're going to do 2 times N. More means plus. And then we're going to have 3 more. So 2 times N plus 3 is how we would write 3 more than 2 times a number. And then again, we have this times in here. We can get rid of it and just do 2N plus 3. Now we're going to switch it up. If you can see, we're using a different number here, or a different word. We're going to use less. So we'll start out just like we normally do. 6 times a number should be 6 times N. Now when you see the word less, that should tell you subtract. So we're going to take 6 times N and we're going to subtract from that 1. So 1 less than 6 times a number would be the same thing as 6 times N minus 1. And then don't forget to get rid of the times sign and just write it as 6N minus 1. Write an expression that is 5 less than 2 times a number. 2 times a number, 2 times a number. We see the word less, so we're going to subtract 5. So we got 2 times N minus 5. And that would be how we could write it. Remember, when it comes to writing it, we don't need that times in between, and we could just write 2n minus 5. Go ahead and pause the video and write the expression that goes with 7 less than 3 times a number, and then hit play and see how you did. You should have gotten that 3 times a number should be 3 times n. Less means we're going to subtract 7. So 3 times n minus 7, we can drop the times and just write 3n minus 7. Just to review before we end the video, any letter can be used to represent an unknown amount. Usually we just use the first letter of whatever we're trying to represent. To solve for unknown amounts, you can use inverse operations. So operations refer to addition, multiplication, subtraction, or division. They can also be much more complex, like an exponent or a square root. A variable is a symbol, usually an English letter, written to replace an unknown or changing quantity. And an expression is a mathematical phrase which contains numbers, variables, and operations.